Tons of PC hardware news today, but let's start with the 4060 Ti and the 4060. When are they coming out? Well, videocards.com has a very interesting embargo timeline for us to take a look at. So this would be the kind of thing that's probably leaked from a board partner contact that videocards.com has. They're not specifying exactly where they get their sources, but this is not the first time before a GPU launch that videocards.com has leaked something like this and had accurate information. So I would put a high trust rating on this source myself if I had to place bets. But that being said, leaks and rumors, nothing official. Anyway, 4060 Ti, looks like April 26th was the date for add-in card press and influence seating list submission. So like, who are we gonna get review samples to? And then May 5th, a couple of deadlines that are perhaps grayed out here, but then we get shipping to channel on May 5th. And then we're getting, at this point, end of May date to be decided for the rest of this, including product announcement and the most important one, on-shelf date. So it's looking like Nvidia is targeting the end of May for the 4060 Ti, and it does specifically say the end of May. But it doesn't have a specific date. Now, the RTX 4060, interestingly enough, is just listed as to be decided. So if none of this type of stuff has been planned for May, I would say that we wouldn't expect the 4060 in May, maybe June, who knows, but there had been some conflicting reports on whether we'd get the 4060 Ti and 4060 together in May, or whether it would be spaced out a bit more. This seems to indicate spaced out a bit more. Anyway, there's also some interesting information here in this same videocards.com article. One thing mentioning that the board for the 3060 Ti will be the PG190, which is the same board as the 3060 Ti, the predecessor, and that is unusual. So usually a new GPU generation would get a new board design. Now this could hopefully cut costs. The 4060 Ti is rumored to use less power than the 3060 Ti, so any kind of power, cooling situation that you had going there. In other words, if this could actually save money, that would be a good thing if it's passed along to consumers. Yet to see where that is. Speaking of that, the pricing. So in the same videocards.com article, they're claiming that Nvidia has not mentioned any price to board partners, so anything you hear elsewhere is pure speculation. So videocards.com saying, there's a lot of leakers and, rumors out there have thrown out some possible price numbers for the 4060 Ti. Videocards.com going out there and saying that's just speculation. Now, whether or not that's true, it has to be which source do you trust more. Like I said, videocards.com has leaked things like this in the past and been very accurate with them. So I believe they do have a source within one of the board partners giving them this information and has been accurate in the past. So I would put pretty high credibility here. Generally, pricing can be decided at the very last minute anyway. So we'll go ahead and see what's happening here. Now remember, these cards are limited to a 128-bit bus, according to rumors. Again, this is not official. And PCIe Gen 4 to 8 lanes instead of 16. So given that they're doing that, plus reusing a board from the PG190, from the 3060 Ti predecessor, all of those things could cut cost. And if that is all passed on to the consumer, I would love to see the 4060 come out priced very aggressively, especially due to the fact that we're probably still seeing 8 gigabytes here, according to, again, all of the rumored specs that we've seen. And at this point, I'm like 100% confident on the 8 gigabytes. For example, we see Tech Power Up reporting on the 4060 Ti and 4060 coming with 8 gigabytes from an MSI leak based on pre-built systems. So you can see that these pre-built systems here do list, it's a screenshot of them with their pricing and all that, saying 4060 Ti 8 gigabyte. And there's another one showing 4060 Ventus 2X 8 gigabyte. So, I mean, systems being listed at 8 gigabyte. This is certainly seems to be 8 gigabyte. And we're also getting leaked pictures. This is articles at videocards.com, but coming from the source Megasize GPU on Twitter, who has leaked photos and things like this accurately in the past before. There is your AD106-350-A1, which, again, that AD106-350 is the GPU we're expecting to be called the 4060 Ti. Remember, Nvidia produces GPUs and then can use marketing to call them whatever they want, right? But that's the one we're expecting to be called the 4060 Ti. So overall, what does that mean for all of this? Well, I hate seeing an 8GB card here. The overall rumored power level is 22 teraflops if you go off of all of these, which would put it right around a 3070 Ti, but with better energy efficiency, AV1 encoding, and frame generation. 8GB kind of feels bad, man. If the price is low enough, though, it could still be a good card. But for me, it's this feels like budget card specs. Especially with the 128-bit bus and the 8GB VRAM. So if they come in at a budget price, this could be attractive. Also depends on what AMD has in store for us. So this next one depends on your feelings on Moore's Law is dead. I know that there is a variety of feelings about his leaks and accuracy, but the latest I could find about a 7600 XT is coming from Moore's Law is dead, saying that AMD has notified board partners about the upcoming embargo schedule for the next Radeon desktop update. So the report is that basically we'll be seeing a May 25th date for the 7600 XT. That's pretty interesting, given that, again, our 4060 Ti is going for an on-shelf date at the end of May. So this could be both of them trying to get a card out to compete against each other right around the same time in the end of May. 7600 XT, again, they're saying press sampling May 15th, MSRP reviews on the 24th, release date the 25th, and above MSRP models get reviewed a day late, which is similar to what Nvidia has done in the past. Now, again, the rumored specs on that is, again, to be an 8GB card like the 4060 Ti, total board power around 175 watts. And yeah, we don't have a lot of details to go off of there, but that's the situation on that one. Now, I was curious if there were any rumors on, well, what about the higher tier cards that we haven't got yet in between the 7600 XT and the 7900 XT? Well, I did find WCCF Tech reporting on some information on these cards, the 7800, well, there's the XT and possibly an XTX and an RX 7700 XT. Their source for this seems to be Red Gaming Tech on YouTube. And the overall information seems to be that there's an XTX model on the 7800, which Red Gaming Tech is claiming is that this SKU might just get canceled. So this one he's not very confident will actually release, but it would be, if it did come out, it looks like a 16GB GDR6 VRAM connected to a 256 bus with a total board power of around 300 watts, and will roughly compete with the 4070 Ti. However, then he says that the 7800 XT without the extra X would be a little bit slower than the 4070 Ti. It would have 60 compute units and a game clock of around 2.6 gigahertz and a boost clock of 2.8, which would get you a peak FP32 at around 43 teraflops and sustained at around 40. The card consuming around 285 watts. And 16 gigabytes of VRAM across a 256-bit bus. So it looks like this would be interesting if it came in kind of in between the 4070 and 4070 Ti in performance. Those are both 12 gigabyte cards. This would be 16, which would be its main selling point besides pricing, if AMD would hopefully at least price it aggressively. Obviously, no prices at this point. But again, you'd have the obvious, the better upscaling, frame generation, and ray tracing. But we're not seeing this coming yet. Like I said, it looks like the next rumor does seem to be the 7600 XT coming in. So when or if we get this card, I have talked in previous videos about where is there room for this as long as AMD's 6000 GPUs are selling at such aggressive prices. Because that could make it hard to generate any excitement over the launch of these ones. Now, the 7700 XT is rumored to be peak teraflops of around 32 and sustained at 29.4, being a 225-watt card, cache size 64 megabytes on both of those, and 48 megabytes respectively, and saying that there was a smaller 54 compute unit variant that has been canceled. And he's saying the 7600 XT would be replacing the 6650, 6700 XT GPUs with the 7600 non-XT, more targeting the 6600 XT and 6650 XT cards. Now that's a little bit weird because like the 6650 and the 6600 are basically like the same. It's like a few percent performance difference, not much. But anyway, we'll have to see what happens with all this. Again, leaks and rumors and all that. It looks like the next one is most likely to be the 7600 XT. We have seen other leaks and rumors in the past pointing to that being the next one coming out as well. And again, that does seem to make sense if they want something out here to compete with the 3060 Ti. Seems like so far AMD has been happy to just rest on their 6000 series cards competing with the rest of Nvidia's product stack. They have their 7000 series cards with the 7900 XT and XTX to compete with the newer, more powerful 4000 series. So even recently, we've seen AMD tweeting about their 16 gigabyte cards competing and available at a lower price up against the their NVIDIA counterparts, showing that you can get up to 16 gigabytes at only $499 with the RX 6800 compared to the 3070 with 8 gigabytes at $540. All that. So AMD has been still kind of marketing their VRAM capacity and aggressive pricing of their 6000 series. But like we said, if NVIDIA comes in with something compelling, priced more aggressively on that 4060 Ti, maybe that would be AMD needing to actually release something new to try to compete. Now, let's move on to some Intel stuff. So over at Boring Text Reviews, which promises boring old-fashioned text reviews without deceptive clickbait or intrusive ads. So there you go. With some interesting info showing Ashes of the Singularity, which it can be used to benchmark, a bit old at this point, but it has a benchmark database where sometimes you'll see hardware being tested way before it actually releases. And here we're seeing something very interesting. The Intel Core Ultra 5 1003H. Now, Intel Core Ultra 5. Notice there's no Core i5, it's Core Ultra 5. It seems like this could indicate changing up the branding on Intel's CPUs. Now, I don't want to get way ahead of anything, but there's a tweet about this saying, like, imagine you're losing market share when you've been a monopoly for decades, and your bright idea is to burn all brand recognition to the ground. That's Intel's plan by removing the I in i7, i5, i3. All the decades brand recognition being lit on fire for no reason. I've got to say that if they did remove the I branding on their chips, I would have similar feelings to this tweet. It seems like a bad move to me. Now, are they actually going to do this? Later on, I found a videocards.com article talking about the same leak, but getting it from other sources. And, videocards.com is arguing about, we already have confirmation of Meteor Lake incoming, and it should be part of the 14th Gen Core series, which has that I branding. So this really just seems weird. So honestly, at this point, I don't know exactly what to make of this, but Intel, if you're considering getting rid of your Core i5, i7, whatever branding and going with Ultra 5, that just seems like a mistake. And Intel, you just reported the largest quarterly loss in company history. So maybe now's not the time to burn any brand recognition that you already have. Now, anyway, in terms of Intel graphics, they have appointed a replacement for Raja Kaduri, who left a little while ago, had been the head of their graphics division, which was then kind of bundled in as part of their AXG. Well, we now have Intel appointing Deepak Patil as head of graphics group, replacing Raja Kaduri. I was looking into, okay, what has he done in the past? I hadn't actually heard of him. It's looking like Intel is saying that, again, he will serve as the CVP and general manager of the Accelerated Computing Systems and Graphics Group. And he recently held position of DCAI Chief Technology and Strategy Officer, having held senior engineering leadership positions across the high-tech industry, including being a founding member of Microsoft's Azure and leading Dell's Apex as a service business. So to me, it seems like this kind of appointment might make sense for if, as part of the AXG group, which remember isn't just the gaming graphics cards, it also is, I think, a lot more into looking into how that all applies to servers and data centers and all that kind of stuff. So it might make sense as that kind of an appointment. But anyway, further signs that that Intel is not just cutting their GPU division as continues to be thrown around. Now, as far as just only related in the sense of where are people landing and ending up in this space. So EVGA, as widely publicized, had gotten out of the GPU business. Well, Jacob Freeman was a well-known member of the EVGA GeForce team, and it's not. And by the way, has been well known and involved in the just tech space even before that. Well, he is now employed at Nvidia as GeForce Evangelist. So this is like technical marketing, product marketing department. So it's a marketing position, but one where you would expect the person to actually not just be a marketer who doesn't really know anything about the tech side of things. This would be more of the technical marketing position. Anyway, Jacob Freeman has been a good part of the tech space for a long time, and so it's nice to see him landing in what seems to be a good position. Now, I should report on Gamers Nexus's finding regarding the exploding AMD Ryzen 7800X3D and melted motherboards. So there's a very long video available here. It's almost 40 minutes long. I think it's very interesting. It will be all my sources, including this, will be linked in my video description, and I highly encourage you to check this video out if you haven't yet. But if you just don't have time for a 40-minute video and are like, did they find anything indicating that my CPU and motherboard are about to die on me, anything like that? Well, here's their bullet-pointed list right at the end of their findings. Basically, AMD and its partners are actively rolling out BIOSes to address this. I've already, like some of you guys saw, I did just recently test my 7800X3D in Jedi Survivor and some other games. That was already on a BIOS that had been rolled out for ASUS, which reduces the SoC voltage, and that should control most of the issues. Anyway, the rollout has been complete chaos, according to Gamers Nexus. Gigabyte has also had rollout issues. We haven't checked the others. Again, Gamers Nexus claiming AMD is offering replacements for CPUs killed, even if they were killed by Expo, which would technically void warranty because it's technically overclocking. But they are saying that they will honor that, and AMD is paying shipping both ways for at least the United States, but that's still to be decided for the rest of the world. If you watched more into the video, Gamers Nexus is claiming that they're not fully happy with just locking down the VSoC to 1.3. They feel like they found other issues and over current protection things that should probably be changed. And all of that, and it's a very interesting video. I highly recommend you watch the whole thing. But in general, my conclusion as well as theirs is you're probably not in any danger if you update your BIOS right now, but that doesn't mean that there's not still things that could be improved overall. Anyway, there's that. Now, another leak. The ASUS ROG Ally will start at $600 with AMD Z1 and 256GB SSD. I'm very interested in this. If you're out of the loop on this, this is a Steam Deck competitor coming from ASUS, and coming with some very powerful looking silicon from AMD with their Z1 and Z1 Extreme. Now, the Z1 is cut down significantly from the Z1 Extreme, and that's looking like it's going to cost $700. And honestly seems to be a massive step up specs-wise, so it might be worth it. Now, none of this is confirmed. These are leaks, but these are widely reported leaks, and it seems to be coming from what seems to be a pretty solid source, although I believe we're supposed to get full details on these on May 11th, so we'll see if that changes things. But I've got to say, I was expecting higher price point than $600 for the lowest end model, and this actually makes them competing much more closely with the Steam Deck on pricing. Although Steam Deck does have a 64 gigabyte model for only, what is it, $400? Something like that. I'm spacing it off the top of my head. But this does put them in more direct pricing competition with the Steam Deck than I thought they'd be able to. Because remember, Valve with the Steam Deck can count on sales through the Steam platform to make up cost, in order to price their thing more aggressively in their overall pricing calculation. Whereas ASUS, I don't think would be able to count on anything like that, right? So this is interesting to me. I'm very interested in this $700 Z1 Extreme version and how well that will perform. Now, there's other handhelds coming out. I'm seeing this one. I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm just going to call it AOKZOE, Z-O-E. I don't know. It's a Chinese company that makes these gaming handhelds, and they've got one coming out with the Ryzen 7 7840U Phoenix APU. Now, this is interesting because at first, a lot of people thought that's what would be in their ROG Ally, but we're now seeing that it's the Z1 Extreme, which is very similar, but AMD is claiming it's had a lot of its, power tuning done more carefully for a handheld platform rather than just a general laptop platform, which would be more of what you'd expect from the 7840U. Now, it looks like this could cost $800 on a flash sale, but be $1,000 when it's more like full price. Although the specs on this thing are pretty interesting. It's looking like it'll offer up to an 8-inch 1200p screen and up to 64 gigabytes of memory, which is quite a bit. By the way, that's not SSD storage, that is RAM. I don't know why your gaming handheld would need 64 gigabytes of RAM, but apparently it is available. But there will be more cut down versions as well. Anyway, if you look at the specs of these listed by videocards.com, you can see how this one stacks up versus the ROG Ally, where they have the Extreme version versus the non-Extreme version, and then we have the Steam Deck coming in here as well. Videocards.com hadn't updated to the non-Extreme version leaked pricing at $600, but that's where that question mark would fit in here. So I don't know. Very compelling options here. I really think it's the ROG Ally Extreme if it really does come in at that $700 price point. I'm going to be very interested in testing one of these out. I might need to buy one for the channel, honestly, for me to play with, but I'd probably give you a comparison against my Steam Deck if I did. Anyway, now in other mobile performance, the AMD Radeon 780M RDNA 3 integrated GPU has been tested in multiple games. Including with FSR and even some ray tracing. This is coming from an article at WCCFtech.com, but it looks like they're gathering the information from tech channel AMD APU Gaming, which is run by Twitter fellow Tech Epiphany. Anyway, it doesn't have the performance compared versus competitors to give you a percentage difference. But you do see some reasonable just performance from an absolute perspective, like Forza Horizon 5, 720p high, 67 frames per second, 1080p high, 53 frames per second. and so on from there. You're seeing some Horizon Zero Dawn results, able to get 1080p high with FSR balance, so not really 1080p, but upscaled at 45 to 60 FPS. If you went down to the medium settings in this game, you would probably get significantly better results. Doom Eternal, dynamic res with ray tracing, 45 to 50 FPS, without ray tracing, 60 to 75. So interesting, actually getting some kind of playable frame rates, at least with ray tracing. Not saying you would want to actually play it that way, but that's at least pretty interesting. Spider-Man Remastered, 1080p FSR 2.1 Ultra Performance. That's upscaling to a point that you really wouldn't want to use, but with ray tracing, 20 to 35 FPS. So again, I don't think you'd want to be playing with the ray tracing there, but some interesting results on this for sure. You get some Microsoft Flight Sim results. You can go ahead and check the link in the description if you want more info. Now, I do want to do a little bit of a follow-up talking about Jedi Survivor testing. Again, I was claiming it's mostly CPU limited, so it's not that the 4090 can't do well in this game, it's that there's no CPU that can enable high frame rates in all areas of the game on the 4090. Well, as in my testing, some people questioned if it was just that I had an AMD CPU. Some people questioned whether it's a CPU bottleneck at all. So I do want to just mention that Digital Foundry has completed their PC testing for Jedi Survivor, calling it the worst AAA PC port of 2023 so far. Anyway, love that. They're showing the CPU utilization on an Intel i9-12900K paired with their 4090, inducing a CPU limited situation by running 4K FSR2 performance, showing that in some scenes it also struggles to break 60 FPS, just like my 7800X 3D, and again fails to utilize most of the cores, with just a couple of cores being actually highly utilized. And again, they don't need to report 100% utilization for this to be a CPU bottleneck for a variety of reasons I've talked about elsewhere. So many people in my comments still saying this is not a CPU bottleneck. We'll also say that Digital Foundry also called this a CPU bottleneck, mentioning it's due to the game not being able to adequately utilize the CPU resources that are available, but it is still meaning that the 4090 could produce better frame rates. It is being held back, waiting for a CPU to feed it info and move on. Anyway, the Respawn has said, who are the developers for Jedi Survivor, has issued an apology for the PC performance and saying that there's no one comprehensive fix for all of it, but that they do promise to just continue to be making improvements. There's a big thing here that I was going to read through, but this video is getting really long, so link in the description. But basically promising that they're committed to fixing these issues as soon as possible, but each patch requires significant testing to ensure that they don't also introduce new problems. Anyway, overall, I'm very much enjoying the game. I'm still playing the game despite the issues, and I think it's fun. And because I have such a high-end system, I can still get a pretty decent experience other than the stutters. But it's really unfortunate for most people who don't have a really high-end CPU to get held back by the CPU performance. And again, regardless of how good your setup is, the game stutters a lot from a lot of those Unreal Engine shader compilation, as well as traversal stutters. And there's still shader compilations despite the fact stutters despite the fact that it compiles shaders at the beginning of the game, and still makes you wait to compile shaders every time you start up the game, despite it not really needing to compile any more shaders. Let's just move on. Anyway, this was really interesting. So the YouTube channel Paulo Gomez, and apparently working with Hartech, has modded a 3060 8GB, because if you haven't seen this, yes, the 3060 normally has 12 gigabytes, launched with 12 gigabytes, but Nvidia did end up releasing an 8GB model to not a lot of fanfare. Well, apparently, this team has been able to mod the 8GB version back to being a 12GB version, which is extremely interesting. This is not the kind of mod that the average user would be able to do. Basically, the board had some empty slots for VRAM, because it was the same board as a 12 gigabyte version, so they were able to mod more VRAM back onto it. Now, that still wouldn't work on a 128-bit memory bus, so they would have to, apparently they were able to fix the disabled bits of the memory bus to get up and running back to a 192-bit memory bus. So interesting stuff. Now, if you did this and there wasn't a compatible BIOS, you still couldn't actually use it and get any performance out of it. But because it does seem to be just based on the 12 gigabyte version, they were able to just get it up and running and actually showed significantly increased performance in the 1080p Extreme Unigen superposition benchmark, which is pretty interesting. So interesting testing, not something the average person is going to be able to do to their 8 gigabyte card. Although it does always bring up the thing that, I think a lot of people wish there was, which is, wouldn't it be nice if GPUs just had slottable VRAM, like you could just buy more? Your 3070 Ti with its 8 gigabytes of VRAM was fine at first, but now there's games coming out where you wish it was 16. Wouldn't it be nice if you could just buy some chips that were double the capacity, slot them in, and it was user changeable? That would be cool. It's not the world we live in, though. Speaking of interesting mods for Nvidia GPUs, though, we're seeing it reported that there's a third-party tool enabling per-app power management for GeForce GPUs. So rather than just power limiting things just overall, this app would allow you to do it as like a profile per game. So maybe in certain games, you want to have a different power configuration. I'm seeing this at videocards.com. They're getting it from Guru 3D, but in general, I would like to remind you, as well as this article reminds you, that using tools like this can cause problems, and you have to trust them. This is not an NVIDIA-developed tool. This is a third-party tool. So again, if you don't really need to be messing with things like this, then maybe don't. But I know some people like to, so I thought I'd point out that that is now available. Speaking of other cool mods, DLSS 3, the mod for Elden Ring, now works perfectly and will be released soon. Again, this is a mod. This is coming from the modder Pure Dark, who seems to be the most successful with modding in DLSS as 2 as well as 3 into games. He's saying that his Elden Ring mod is now working perfectly based on some stuff he learned by implementing it into Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Now, Skyrim doesn't have reflex working due to some issues with DX11, apparently, but it looks like the Elden Ring version will also have reflex working correctly to help offset the latency introduced from frame generation. So that's pretty cool. It'll be neat if this starts to be able to be added to more and more games that don't have it by modders. That's really interesting that they can do that. I'm also seeing a report at WCCFtech.com that some more affordable AMD Dragon Range laptops are hitting retail, at least in China, with a 16-core version starting at $1,150 and 12-core for $1,050. And it looks like these, I think, were paired with some NVIDIA 40 series GPUs as well. So that's a much lower price than what we've seen in the US, ranging from $1,500 to $5,000. So it'll be nice if we start seeing maybe price cuts overall on that. And the last thing I'll leave you with is it looks like Steam got some updates to a lot of how it looks, but also a beta update with some changes to a lot of changes under the hood, a lot to the in-game overlay. I was going to go into more detail on this, but guys, the video is 33 minutes long and I need to get my kids up ready for school and I need to get to work. So I'll leave this for you as homework if you're interested to read through it in the video description. I hope all of you have an excellent day.